This is the Real Digital Transformation podcast series, empowering technology and business professionals to succeed with digital transformation. Now, here's your host, best-selling author Thomas Earl.
Hi, this is Thomas Earl, and welcome to another episode of the Real Digital Transformation Show. I have with me today Rich Berliner, the CEO of Digital Locations. Rich is someone who's been in the wireless and communication industry for over 37 years now, and is here today to speak to us about the impact and innovations of satellite technology on the digital business world, and also touch upon the relationship between satellite technology, how it's evolving, and how AI is tying into that evolution. Rich, welcome to the show.
Thomas, thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So, Rich, let's begin with just the current state of satellite technology. The average business owner, the average employee in a work environment, the average consumer basically takes for granted what satellites do for us on a day-to-day basis in terms of communication enablement. But that whole technology sector is evolving along with the rest of the digital business world. Tell us a bit about where it has been and where it's going right now in general.
Sure. Well, thanks, Thomas. Appreciate the lead in there. So, just for everybody's purposes for this discussion, satellite technology is kind of the DoorDash or the Uber Eats of the communication space. So we're the delivery service, and so whether it's Domino's or Papa John's or Chinese food or whatever it might be, that product at the end of the day is the decision of the businesses that are involved. So all kinds of communications are carried on satellite, from long distance phone calls to television signal, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, the important thing to know about satellite is that it's a fascinating technology that really is in the background, and very few people have any appreciation from how much of what they're getting on a daily basis in terms of communications, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, telephone calls, television, streaming. A great deal of it is delivered in some form through satellite technology. And understand there are sort of three types of satellite technology in terms of the orbits that satellites are in. There's GEO or geostationary, MEO, which would be middle Earth orbit, and then LEO, which is low Earth orbit. And there's actually, recently a spin-off called very low Earth orbit. From the laws of physics, obviously, the closer the satellite, the easier it is to transmit and receive from Earth. But there's so much going on in terms of companies launching new satellites and new technology being delivered. It's I'll tell you a startling comment that was made at a recent show that I was at. There was a general, and a good portion of what's going on in satellite business is military. But a general who was on stage got up and said, make no mistake, the next war will be a space war. So satellite is so integral into what's going on for the defense of our country, for businesses who have the ability to transmit and receive over a satellite, to all the things that go into running a business today and how people need to communicate in this day and age. So that's a quick thumbnail of what the satellite business looks like. And today I would be remiss if I didn't say without sarcasm that Elon Musk and Starlink is really dominating the news about what's going on in space and satellite technology at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've noticed that too. Just a quick question on that comment the general made about it being a space war. Is that in reference to the fact that satellites, their communication capabilities are essential to warfare in general, or is that an indication that satellites will be targeted as part of future warfare to, shoot them down so that you disable that type of communication?
Well, the answer to that, I'm not trying to sound funny, but the answer to that is yes. It's all of those things and more.
Right.
So it's satellite to satellite um, offensive maneuvers. It's um, seeing the battlefield, communicating with um, troops in the field, guiding ships and planes and missiles and all of that. So I will tell you that was an ominous comment that the general made, but I will tell you an interesting thing was that at this conference there were a lot of soldiers walking around with uniform that said Space Force on it, and that was kind of an interesting thing to see rather than just their military title. And then there were guys running around that said Space Command, and
Hmm.
so it's there's a hierarchy in the space military field already as to how all of this is going together. And so I could tell you that, as a lot of things like with NASA and the military, they develop technologies that then become commercial. There is a great effort right now into making sure we have military capability. I would think, again, this is not firsthand knowledge, but from what I see and hear at technology shows that there's a great deal of effort being put into the military piece of this that will ultimately have um, opportunities for the business world.
Hmm. Interesting. Another comment you made about the very low orbiting satellites that are now emerging. How far away from Earth are those satellites?
Those are somewhere under, the low Earth orbit LEO satellites are 300 to 500 kilometers, and very low Earth orbit would be somewhere under 250 kilometers or so above,
Okay. I,
roughly speaking.
Interesting. So you have different layers of orbits of satellites based on these zones, and then the closer they are to the Earth's surface, the more powerful the signal is.
No, I wouldn't say the more powerful the signal. Actually, it's just sort of laws of physics. Um, the closer you are, think about it in the simplest terms of your cordless phone at home. There's a distance that it will transmit. Now there were more powerful cordless phones, and that you could go a greater distance, but the geosynchronous satellites are very powerful, but they're very large. Those satellites have to have a lot of power to transmit and to receive signals. So low Earth orbit, or the Starlink satellites that he's putting up, are much smaller, and they carry a great amount of computer power, but they don't have the same amount of transmit power because they don't need that much because they're closer.
Mhm. Interesting. So refocusing now on the relevance of all this to the digital business technology domain of our business world. We have uh, many advancements here in terms of how businesses are becoming more digitally enabled, trying to become more disruptive, outperform each other, and bandwidth and network robustness, infrastructure, and communication capabilities are a core requirement to all of that being successful. And also with the introduction of AI, there might be a relationship there because of the amount of data that AI systems need to process, streams of data that are continually processed, and with generative AI, voluminous content that is continuously produced by these systems, which may tie directly into business applications. Um, have you seen how the advancements in satellite technology are helping businesses better do what they need to, or perhaps introduce some innovations to businesses that they had not thought of before?
You know, that's an interesting question, and I will give you sort of the 50,000 foot level answer, which is there are a lot of ways that businesses can communicate in this day and age. Besides, you have obviously still have, um, you know, telephony, fiber optic telephony. You have cellular. You have undersea cables, and then you have satellite. So all of these are delivery methods for communications. So at the end of the day, AI will be delivered over many, many different pathways. So I would say that, like everything going on in the digital world today, AI will affect the ability for satellites to, carry more technology, to be, thinking from the satellite rather than being a dumb terminal, a dumb receiver. They will be active and they will be more intelligent. So, you have to look at satellite as a delivery method and all of those technologies as delivery methods. And what companies choose to deliver as their offerings will vary greatly. And we're certainly talking about generative AI and the ability for me to go past what I'm doing in a Google search now and talk to some sort of a bot that's now AI powered, and I will be able to do that on multiple ways of communicating, whether it's talking through an undersea cable that is has the ability to be tapped into, or having listening devices on cellular technology, or whatever the delivery method is. We will see businesses be using that to deliver some quality level of AI. But in addition, every business will begin to modify how they do things, how they spend money, how they save money by using AI. And maybe, again, I'm not familiar specifically with anything I can tell you as to, Starlink is doing this with the AI technology today, but I will assume that every satellite operator is working on figuring out what their AI play will be for their transmission network. And then whatever businesses want to deliver, whatever products and services they want to deliver, that will be the business's opportunity to use that delivery method. So, as I said before, we're the delivery people, we're the Uber Eats and DoorDash, and whatever product, whatever food product, or whatever AI product businesses want to deliver will be developing over time. I think in a greater and greater fashion very soon.
And I guess you mentioned at the beginning of the show, you said something interesting, which I just want to repeat, which is how, because of the amount of legacy technology that exists in the satellite industry, it's perhaps more difficult to adopt a technology innovation like AI because it's simply so burdensome and so expensive to do so. Would you say that's accurate?
I mean, no disrespect, but I think it's a little bit skewed. What I was saying was the amount of money that's been invested in the terrestrial wireless um, networks in the hundreds of billions. The good news is that satellite is the exact opposite, because satellites have a 4, 5, 6 year lifespan or less, and have to be replaced and brought down and replaced on a regular basis. So the opportunity for satellite to employ AI technology is far greater than the sunk cost that the terrestrial carriers and the fiber folks have, because that cost is sunk, that fiber is in the ground, that tower has its equipment up there, and it costs billions and billions of dollars to build it. Where satellite, we're constantly reinventing these networks and constellations because satellites have a finite lifespan. And so if you look at, again, I use Starlink only because they're the quote unquote stars, they're the rock stars right now. If you look at Starlink, um, they are constantly launching satellites into space. And so, they have the ability to add technology as they put up new assets. Now, the other folks, the OmniSpace, the Viasats, and the other companies that have either geosynchronous satellites, again, those have a lifespan. They'll come out of service. New ones will go into service, and that sunk cost isn't as big a factor when you look at space technology
Oh,
and the
that's
ability to modify those things and relaunch is simply really is a good thing, I think, in terms of modifying the technology and making it more AI friendly.
that's really interesting. That life cycle that satellites go through. I have a question about that, but before we get further into it, just a quick question regarding the reasoning behind this life cycle. What happens to a satellite after 5, 6 years? Is it just the wear and tear of space?
That's a great question. The answer is a lot of things happen. You're talking about um, extreme temperatures of hot and cold. You're talking about computers that don't like heat and cold. You're talking about power supplies that are kept working for many years, and like your car battery, it's a terrific brand new out of the box item, but it has a lifespan, and you're talking about the opportunity for these things. I did a podcast myself about a year ago, and one of the biggest aspects of this, in terms of the lifespan and the operation of these things, is how these satellites dissipate heat, which is a major factor, which frankly before that I hadn't even thought of. It's about dissipation of heat from all that equipment in space. It's not just like you can open the vents and turn the air conditioning on or off. It's a much more difficult problem to solve. So um, the uh, difficulties because of the harsh environment is what gives these things lifespan. Plus, remember, um, everything that's in orbit has a continuous lifespan only as much as gravity is continuing to try to pull it back to Earth on a regular basis. So you have satellites, some of which have the ability to adjust their orbit and some that don't. And so all of those things go into the ecosystem of these satellites, regardless of the orbit and where they may be. Some have propulsion, some don't. Some have a lifespan of that propulsion. Some have longer or lesser. It's a real interesting business that day to day businesses don't think about in terms of their communication. But these satellites are complex organisms, if you will, that have all kinds of problems because of the environment.
And so this life cycle that's forced upon the satellites due to the conditions and
Gravity.
circumstances you just described. Um, so, as you mentioned, that provides a greater opportunity for perhaps a more aggressive adoption of some extent of AI technology into the satellite units themselves. As they come down, they can be upgraded, and then they come down again, they can be upgraded again. Um, Given that, and also, given the fact that the industry itself may be slow to adopt AI in general, but knowing what we know about the general functionality of AI, knowing what you know about what satellites need to do once they're deployed, do you have any sort of speculative ideas about how satellites in the next 5, 10 years may change just to
Yeah.
take advantage of that AI innovation?
Right. So I don't want to mislead you that these satellites are brought down and then relaunched. It's typically that the satellites come down and they either burn up or are come into Earth's atmosphere and are destroyed. But it's that they're constantly sending up replacement satellites
Right.
when these lifespans end. But I could tell you that my sense of it in general is that the AI will be used in the ground element of these things, in the receiving. Again, satellites don't exist independently. They're all controlled by a ground station, and they all broadcast to some sort of receiver on the ground. And I think that's where you'll see AI being deployed um, will be in the ground reception and the ground transmission of these constellations. Um, and again, that's where digital locations is interested, and we'll talk about that at a later point. But we are very much the industry. I mean, when I say we, are very much controlled by um, all the equipment and all the technology that's on the ground, in addition to all the assets that are in space. So that I see as the far easier way to get AI into the equation and to begin the process of using the data that comes out, improving the communications, getting a better bang for your buck with the transmission and the reception that comes from these things. So it seems to me that that's the place that you'll see AI being used extensively first. I'm sure that the satellite companies, though, as they move forward with new equipment, are going to continually upgrade and use AI. Maybe it's even just in the design and building of these new satellites. So that could be, one of the first things you'll see is the ability to bring the costs down, bring the weight down, be able to dissipate heat better. Those are all things that I think you'll see in the near future.
I have one question for you, Rich. Again, just out of the blue, it just came to mind as you were speaking. Tell me if this is a realistic possibility, but what we do know about AI systems today is their ability, beyond just to predict things and generate things, they can make decisions. We can design our AI systems to make decisions autonomously. So we can put an AI system in charge of part of our business operations. And then, based on various scenarios and circumstances it encounters, based on how it was trained, we give it the responsibility to make decisions on its own, to decide what to do in this case, in that case, in the other case. And we monitor it, make sure the decisions are correct, retrain it if necessary, and so on. I'm just wondering, is it possible, perhaps in the future, to see an AI system deployed with a satellite in orbit with the responsibility of basically regulating the satellite's functions in response to environmental conditions the satellite might encounter? So, extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme, perhaps meteor storm or whatnot. And so, especially unforeseen circumstances, unforeseen environmental conditions it may run into, or other malfunctions that it might have, power supply, as you mentioned. Is it realistic to think that an AI component could be part of a satellite to help respond autonomously to those types of conditions and circumstances so as to prolong the lifespan of the
Right.
satellite and to also ensure reliability and quality of communication?
So I'm jumping out of my skin to answer this one. This is relates to one of my favorite topics on this issue, which is space junk. And certainly, directly answering your question, one of the ways that AI could be deployed could be would be to try and keep satellites from bumping into each other or for being hit or hitting space junk. And so there is an enormous amount of bits and pieces, a couple of centimeters across that could destroy satellites, that there is basically a format for tracking these things. But someday, could satellites on their own, if they had a propulsion system, which many, many do, they had a propulsion system and they could sense that they were about to have a collision with something, could avoid that collision using AI. So that is, I would say, one of the highest order of magnitude new uses for AI in space. Just one man's opinion, and I am not a satellite expert. I'm a communications guy by training, but I can tell you that it seems to me that using AI to avoid satellites being hit and destroyed and then falling back to Earth, that would be a major usage for this technology, and potentially independent of some, some young person or controller sitting there with a Nintendo controller trying to move that satellite around so it doesn't collide with something else.
Right.
So, but I think, giving satellites the ability to stay out of trouble from space junk would certainly be a potential usage going forward for AI. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. That makes a ton of sense. So last question, in terms of the digital business world right now, so there are different satellite companies, different providers of communication services. I'm not familiar with how all that exists as a competitive industry, but for corporations today that rely on not just internal but external and remote communication, perhaps even organizations that have IoT networks out there with sensors communicating back to their primary servers. What steps do they take to ensure they're choosing the right communications provider with the right type of satellite network? Is there, there's probably some major players in this industry, and maybe those are default providers that you just go with because they're already established. But how competitive is it? What would you advise an organization to look out for in terms of choosing a provider? And does it matter whether different providers have very low orbit, medium orbit, high orbit satellites? Does that impact in any way their business communication requirements?
Well, I could bore you to tears with the slice and dice of all that information, but it's too much for the short time we have today. But I will tell you that there are really, two things that are going on in space at this point. It's business to business and business to consumer. So, that the geosynchronous orbit satellites are basically carrying bulk traffic to different businesses for different usages, where a good portion of the LEO satellites are doing B2C, Starlink being a business to consumer product. So I can't give you a Viasat versus some other provider at this point in time, because I'm not specifically familiar what each one is trying to provide. But I could tell you that that in each category there are multiple providers, and that the most important thing before anybody launched the first satellite is you must have frequency from the FCC to be able to broadcast, and the FCC in other countries too, if you're going to broadcast worldwide. So that is a difficult problem and a very a complicated situation of having frequency, what frequency, how does that frequency propagate, what countries you're allowed to broadcast into and out of. And so there is a huge universe of products and services that are available from satellite providers, some of whom are using frequencies that they were granted by the FCC, some of whom are sharing frequencies, some of whom have other types of international frequency. So it's a very, very complicated situation. I couldn't really opine on what the considerations are for an individual business, but I could tell you that they have choices. They're good choices. They're very strong and diverse opportunities for carrying bulk traffic and also using sort of what I call a hopping situation. If you're a high-speed trader on the stock market and you want to get to that computer to buy something first, there are multiple ways to get there, whether it's through a fiber optic cable or through a microwave shot or through a satellite connection. So, there is a giant communications ecosystem in the world made up of lots of different delivery methods, lots of different DoorDashes and Uber Eats and other types of delivery services. And the products are widely varied and very, very diverse.
Is there like a broker company or a consulting company? Is there that type of company out there that can help an organization, sort out what the best options are?
Yeah, I'm sure there are communications consultants that will take companies and hold hands through that process of, I need to get my signal from here to here the quickest. What are my options? And there are many, many consulting firms that do that. The big ones, the major consulting firms that deal with communications. And remember that there's no doubt that there's a very important security concern for all of these things, including satellite transmission. So that goes hand in hand with choosing, what service you would like to use and how you're going to secure your communication. We did a story recently I do a weekly news forum for my website. And we did a story about Chinese boats that were, they think, that were trying to hack into undersea cables. So there is a great deal of concern for the security of these assets, no matter what transmission methodology you may use.
Mm-hmm. Super. Well, very informative, Rich. It's something that I think the average organization needs to know more about just to better appreciate what's happening up there and perhaps how innovation in that field might impact or improve their business operations overall. Before we conclude, Rich, could you tell us a bit more about what you do at Digital Locations, what Digital Locations does in general, and what type of innovations you might be working on?
Sure. So we are a public company, and so therefore, information must be only what's been, distributed to the public at this point. But what we have discussed is that Digital Locations basically is in the research business, and what we are doing is we're researching the ability for satellite communications go direct to your smartphone rather than the methodology today is typically there's some sort of receiver. It might be a dish, it might be sort of a platform, but traditionally the communications with satellites has not been directly to your device. So we are working on bringing high-speed data transmission. Telephone calls go along with that, of course, but we're working on bringing high-speed data, sort of Netflix speed transmission directly to your device, whether that be, a smartphone or that be an Apple iPod, that sort of iPad, excuse me, iPod. I'm showing my age with an iPod, but whether that be to a smartphone or to a Samsung tablet or to an iPad, but that is a very difficult problem based on the laws of physics and the amount of power that these things have. But we are working with Florida International University in Miami, developing this, and so we're pushing towards a demo of the technology we've labeled Satena, which is our proprietary technology in this area. And so we're really excited that you hopefully one day with this Satena will be able to receive high-speed data directly to your smartphone.
Oh, that sounds very exciting. That sounds like the kind of innovation that could really transform an industry.
It really is, Thomas, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today because we are really excited about it too. And so, we're doing all the things that you do in these businesses. We've joined a number of associations, the SIA Satellite Industry Association, and a new one called the MSSA Mobile Satellite Service Association. So we are, very much always part of the community and working very hard to do that. And, I'm back and forth between our research facility in Miami and my office in New Jersey. And so it is a really exciting thing, but it's a hard problem. It's not it's not something that, we'll spend a couple of bucks and we'll put this together. It's a difficult situation to solve this problem. And so our team has come up with what we think is a terrific methodology for getting to this. And so we're really excited about the prospects of this. And it is, hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, it is, earth-shattering, ground-changing technology.
Yeah, and congratulations on that. I mean, it sounds like it will impact organizations. Even we spoke before about the military. I could see that being important in that field as well. So congratulations on the breakthrough.
We're not. I don't want to I don't want to make everybody think that it's all here yet. But we're in development on that and pushing hard towards getting that technology. But we're very excited about the progress that's been made. But we're still in the development stages of this, and but it is a very exciting project to be working on.
Wonderful. Well, again, even just to reach that stage sounds like an amazing accomplishment. Rich, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very insightful, and perhaps we can talk again, perhaps once you go beyond the development stage and have more news regarding this.
I would love that. Thanks for having me, and I hope I didn't bore you and your audience. Tears.
Not at all. Thanks so much.
Very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Follow Thomas on LinkedIn